what is it, Tuesday, October 18th, 2016. It is now 9:30 a.m. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Odoracio, Commissioner Henry,
Here.
Commissioner Tedesco,
Here.
Commissioner Hanson,
Here.
Commissioner Pulaski.
Here.
All right, if we could stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Tedesco,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes. All right, there's no awards and presentations. Public comment. Erica, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
We do not.
All right, the next would be elected officials' comment. Is there anyone that wishes to make a comment? I do want to let the audience know and the public know that Commissioner Odoracio had a funeral to attend this morning. He'll be joining us later this afternoon. All right, next, can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Tedesco,
Yes.
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes. Okay, on to new business. County Manager, what do you have for us?
Yeah, we have one item this morning. It's a resolution awarding an agreement to Eon Enterprise Incorporated, DBA Eon Office for general office supplies, paper, and toner. Kim Rowland, our purchasing director, is here to talk through that resolution.
Good morning. Today, I'd like to talk about office supplies. As you're aware, we have been contracting with Eon Office Solutions over the last 3 years as our supplier of choice for those products. The contract has now, however, come to term. So purchasing has been doing a lot of research and cost analysis to determine the best course of action moving forward. And in that analysis, we compared our current pricing with Eon to what the state's award has. They've just made that maybe a couple years ago on office supplies. So in doing so, we found that we could save over $30,000 a year by going with the state cooperative agreement. The state has also awarded to 2 other entities, Eon, Office Max Depot, and Sun Solutions. So not only would we be saving money by going to the state award and not having our own separate agreement, but the icing on the cake here is that we also have the other entities or the other organizations we could use and get a reduced price on our office supplies instead of paying retail. Very small dollar amount that we're paying for Office Max at this time, just those items that Eon doesn't carry. So we want to maintain Eon as our primary contractor of choice. So in doing that, we recommend that we go with Eon Solutions using the state awarded agreement in the estimated amount of $385,000 a year for our office supplies, paper, and toner.
All right, do we have any questions? I see no questions. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move a resolution awarding an agreement to Eon Enterprises, Inc., DBA Eon Office for general office supplies, paper, and toner.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Tedesco,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes. All right, and that's it for new business, I
Yeah,
believe.
no other items.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
we had some people join us after we began. Were there any items? Just curious. Okay. There weren't.
All
Sorry.
right, County Attorney.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have 2 executive sessions on your agenda for today. I would ask that you move to go into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6, 402, 4B and E for the purpose of receiving legal advice and instructing negotiators regarding planning and marketing entity, IGA.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Tedesco,
Yes.
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Henry.
Yes.
And then also that you move to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6, 402, 4A for the purpose of discussing the purchase, acquisition, sale of the Willow Bay property.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Tedesco,
Yes.
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes. All right, that is the end of our public hearing. We'll now go into recess until 10 a.m. All right, we'll go ahead. Is everybody ready? Set up? Ready to go? Okay, why don't we go ahead and go into our land use hearings? It is now 10 o'clock.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. First case before you is the Mile High Outdoor Advertising. I am Emily Collins, Planner 2. So the request is a new electronic off-premise sign, otherwise known as a billboard, in the I-1 zone district. And so the site is at the bottom of your screen here, outlined in the light blue. So to the east, you have Broadway Street, which it directly fronts onto, as well as I-25. To the north is East 53rd Avenue, and then to the south, the gray dotted line right at the bottom of the screen, that's the border between Denver County and Adams County. So just other landmarks other than Broadway and I-25. Just to the north, the aerial shows mostly dirt, but that is the Crossroads Commerce Park development. So you can see that in the zoning. That was the PUD that was recently approved. But for the site itself and the surrounding area, it is, again, I-1, and most of the area is I-1, 2, or 3, so very largely industrial, and currently developed with a variety of commercial or light industrial uses. The comprehensive plan is also industrial, so it does allow for a wide range of employment uses, primarily manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, et cetera. So the use conforms with those goals for our comprehensive plan. So specifically, the conditional use permit request, we have 8 criteria that we're reviewing. Is it permitted in the zone district? Is it consistent with our regulations and any applicable performance standards? Is it compatible with our surrounding area in terms of off-site impacts and suitability of the site for that specific use? So again, the subject property is I-1, so that allows general, commercial, and restricted industrial, currently developed with a 31,000 multi-tenant building. Some of those uses include fitness equipment, sales, playgrounds, hot tubs, and indoor climbing gym, so a variety of commercial uses. And the billboard does require a CUP in that zone district. In the surrounding area, again, adjacent to very large commercial corridors, both Broadway and then I-25. Development is already commercial and light industrial now. There are a few non-conforming residential uses, and what that means is the residential use was permitted previously. Most of these houses were built in the 40s, and then the zoning changed, so they used to be legal, but now it's just a non-conforming use in the industrial zone district. However, those property owners were noticed, and they did not comment on the case. And after a site visit, there's a lot of vegetation in the area and existing buildings that would block most of the views from these properties. So for our performance standards, off-premise signs are regulated in section 4-15. So we do have requirements on maximum height, sign area, the number of signs per lot, the setbacks, and separation between billboards on the same side of the highway. So this table shows you what all of those are, and that the applicant is meeting the maximum 40-foot height, 300 square foot sign area. There will only be one on the lot. The setback is 55 feet from the east property line, which is Broadway. And it is separated by 6,000 feet to the nearest sign, which is to the north at approximately 63rd Avenue is the closest billboard, so just before the off-ramp to I-76. And the applicant is also requesting this to be an electronic sign, which we have performance standards, and that includes the duration of the sign message, the transition, prohibited image types, and the maximum luminance. And again, the applicant's proposal does meet all of those with an 8-second duration, an instantaneous transition. They will not have any animations, spinning graphics, noise, et cetera. Those are all prohibited. And they will have auto-dimming technology, and the maximum luminance will meet our performance standards as well. And so this was a map provided by the applicant that again shows that separation. So about 63rd Avenue is where the closest one is. And this was a site plan provided by the applicant. So the top image is a straight down view. So the sign is very skinny in this image, and that's looking at the roof of the building. So again, you can see it's 10 by 30, and it would be 55 feet measured from the pole to the property line, and meets all the other setbacks. The second image is a face-on view, so a little bit taller than the building itself, but does meet all of our criteria. And then this is a rendering provided by the applicant of the location on site and what that would look like. And this would be from the interstate. Bless you. And then this is from the south end of the property line at 52nd Avenue looking north into the site. And then these are just on-site pictures. So again, this is approximately where the sign would be located. Oops, go back one. That was looking south towards Denver. So again, you can see a variety of commercial uses, some with outdoor storage on site. This is looking north, so right behind this wall is one of those non-conforming residential uses. But again, they did not comment, so that gate there on the right side of the picture is their garage. But again, you can see a cell tower here, the on-ramps on the interstate. This is looking directly across the street. And then south on Broadway as well. So, during the referral, we did not receive any major concerns from Excel. CDOT does state that the applicant needs, if they receive local approval, does need to apply for their permit as well, which they would then have to provide a copy to us when they submit a building permit. Development engineering had no other concerns, and again, property owners within 1,100 feet, which there were 52 of them, we did not receive any comments. So the Planning Commission did consider this case on September 22nd and recommended unanimous approval. They did have a few questions for the applicant. They wanted clarification on the sign face, so they asked if it was going to be in a V shape with a space between the two faces, but it is a straight back-to-back, so there will be no separation of the two sign faces. They also asked about the lease area, and so it's a very small portion of the property, and it's basically adjacent to the utilities that they'll need, and nothing more than that. In terms of the type of advertising, the applicant did make it clear it's only for businesses that are off-site, so any of the businesses on-site could not advertise on it. There's no other freestanding signs, and they all have their wall-mounted signs, which are visible from the interstate. During the public testimony, we did have two property owners, which are adjacent to the site, come in for clarification, and they asked where exactly on the site it was located, and if there's a default display or message at any time if they're not fully leased on their advertising space, or if there's, electronic disruption that there's an error message. And so the applicant did say that their default is an advertisement for the Boys and Girls Club of Denver. But they're typically 80 to 100% fully leased. But if they didn't, then that's the advertisement that they would show. So again, the 8 criteria: is it permitted in the zone district? Is it consistent with all of our regulations and performance standards? And is it compatible with the surrounding area? And staff found that it does meet all of our criteria for conditional use, performance standards, and the comprehensive plan. And so we are recommending approval based on 8 findings of fact, 3 conditions, and 1 note. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Commissioner Tedesco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions. So I guess I was confused at first because I thought you were comparing just regular billboards with a paper finish on them. And then you said there was a 6,000-foot separation of billboards. I don't know that that's correct. Maybe you can help me figure that out, because the Mart has one, and then the south side of the 58th interchange has one at Vickery, the Motorsports. They have one for the pawn shop and I don't know if it's for the pawn shop, but for the motorcycle place and the pawn shop. And correct me if I'm wrong, but does not Grizzly Rose have some type of signage out in front of Grizzly Rose also? And the reason I ask that question is not to throw a wrench in this and try to blow it up. I just think we need to be very clear as to what we're talking about, because this picture that you're showing, I don't think accurately accounts for all the signage we have along that corridor.
Absolutely, it's a great question. So those signs that you're referencing would all be on-site freestanding signs. So there's a difference between a freestanding sign that advertises for the property itself, such as the Grizzly Rose or the Denver Mart, and a difference with an off-premise sign, such as the billboards.
So that answers my second question and my second question was, why wouldn't the businesses on the location be able to advertise on that? And you just answered that, so thank you, appreciate that. Now, let me ask you something. Is there a requirement for those signs? I know that we talk about luminous, the brightness of the signs. And I know that some signs are notoriously brighter than others. How do you enforce that?
So there's technology that could measure the brightness. If we wanted to go out and enforce on that, we could do that. During the building permit, we could also request more detailed information on the specs for the technology that they're using, for the electronic LED lights and all that. And I'm sure the applicant can provide more information as well.
I think that's an interesting comment, because it's, if you want to enforce, you have to go out and get some of these other things. That, to me, implies we're not enforcing anywhere.
Well, I'm not aware of how many signs that we have currently that are electronic. Most of the billboards in unincorporated Adams County are currently static or the paper. There's very few that are electronic. But we
Well,
could certainly investigate that.
And let me say that maybe the billboards are that case, but we have a lot of individual, private electronic boards that are contributing
freestanding
to the
signs.
same factors that I just stated.
Absolutely.
And so from what I get from that, isn't that we're enforcing, it's that if you want to enforce, we could. So I'm trying to figure out where we're going to be if we're going to enforce on these, and are we going to treat all of them equally?
So Commissioner, yes, we can certainly enforce on these things. What we've done so far this year is we've taken a proactive approach on 70% of our cases, and 30% have been more complaint-driven. I don't recall any complaints that we've received from our office regarding the intensity of lights for signage, but I do understand that it's an issue. And we've seen this before with other cases where new signage gets installed and whether the photometric array shows that the candles shouldn't be, you know, as intense as they are further away from the sign or not, we do have this problem come up. So we'll monitor this based on the performance standards and based on the information that's provided in the building permit if this were approved. And then for any of those cases that may come up where this is an issue in the community, I think we'll basically have to do a better job of proactively finding where those cases are. We don't have those complaints right now, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist and that people don't know where to go to contact us and to get a response on this issue. So I think a more proactive approach on our end is what's probably necessary here.
I just want to follow up on that, and that is that you kind of hit the nail on the head. People don't know where to go to complain about it. If the sign is on a certain property, they complain to that property. That property owner isn't going to call up the county and go, hey, I had a complaint about my sign out front, right? So, yes, there is an issue because we get it when we're out in the public that there's, you know, why can't you do anything about this sign? I've called. Well, who have you called? Well, I've called the company. Well,
Commissioner Hanson?
I have more concerns in general just about the policy surrounding these, you know, signs. First of all, does the 6,000 foot, does that take into account all signs, and does it take into account signs in other jurisdictions as well? Is that just in unincorporated Adams County?
So all the signs that would be on, so the regulation specifically is for the same side of the highway. But it does not include off-standing signs on a property such as the Denver Mart. Those are not considered billboard. So the regulation is specific to separating between billboard.
What about other jurisdictions? You know, what if we had a sign that was within 6,000 feet of a sign in Thornton, for example? Would the 6,000 foot rule apply in that case?
I don't know that we've encountered that, so it'd probably be a case-by-case scenario, but I would assume that in Adams County's jurisdiction, yes, it would apply. If it crossed over into Denver, I'm not sure.
Well, you haven't seen it yet, so my guess is you're guessing how you would enforce the code, and that doesn't apply in this particular case, but I only say it to illustrate a point, and that is that there is an insignificant increase in proliferation of these signs along the I-25 corridor in the last 5 years. There's numerous signs that already exist a little bit to the north of that in Thornton Northglenn, and now you're seeing, some of these larger signs that might be considered on-premises signs, like the one at the Mart, and I think there's one now at American Furniture Warehouse. And so I have, significant issues about turning I-25 into the Las Vegas Strip. Now, you see, if you drive in other places, like if you drive in Phoenix, for example, you see really massive electronic billboards, larger than, what we have here. So I have some concerns because I don't even remember having a discussion about this area of the code. And I'm not sure that we have had a discussion about what our policy with regard to electronic signs are. That's probably neither here nor there in this particular case. I mean, I'm not interested in applying code that doesn't exist, to these folks. But I mean, I have significant concerns about signs in general what that means for distracted drivers, safety, as well as just aesthetics, I mean, do we want to be the part of town where all the electronic billboards are? Because I don't see them as much in other areas of town. So that's just more of an editorial comment in general. I certainly would love to see, more discussion on this arena.
Do we have any idea when the last time we updated this regulation or this policy?
I don't recall that it's been discussed, at least certainly in my tenure, it's not been discussed. And so this is an issue that certainly does carry a lot of weight and significance. And so as we continue with our code amendment team, which is looking at all of our zoning regulations and considering what items should be reconsidered, this can certainly be an item on that list that's brought to you in the near future.
I really would like to, because we do have one sign on I-25 that when the road is wet, the glare off the highway is immense to the point to where it's blinding. And I've come across it, and I've been meaning to say something to y'all, so I'm sorry if I got distracted with other things, but it is something that definitely is an issue on that highway. I also have concerns about light pollution along this. So, but I'm not going to obviously, if everything's within code in this case, obviously we'll need to pass it. But, yeah, I definitely have concerns about this policy. I agree. I think that you've got Commissioner Tedesco.
Oh, no, I was
Oh, I
waiting
thought,
for you to finish. I want to ask a question, but you.
no, I'm fine. Commissioner Tedesco?
Madam Chair, I just have another question, and that is, or a statement, and that is that we have, as a board, seen this over the last 4 years, because I know of 5 cases in this general area on the I-25, I-76 corridor that we've had this conversation. There was a sign at US 36 and I-25, there was a sign off of I-76 and by the auction house. There was another sign that we dealt with out at Transwest in 76. So we've dealt with these electronic signs on a continual basis, but I think we're correct in saying that we haven't had the discussion on our policy and our code as to what that means for Adams County. And I think that, I think that brings up a good question. What does that mean? And we should have that conversation. Now, I'm not saying that because I want to disrupt this case. I just think this is the appropriate time where we can get it on record and we can say we have to have this conversation. Because there are problems, like what we discussed earlier with the lumens, and especially, some of the, the questions of, when it's raining, when it's, dark, and, the effect it has on drivers and all of that. We need to have that conversation, and I'd appreciate having that conversation, so. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? Would the applicant like to come forward?
Go ahead and introduce
If you
Steve
could-
Pelican, property manager,
If you could give us your address also, that'd be great.
5200 Broadway.
He's the lessor, but they're the property owner.
Steve Richards with Mile High Outdoor, 9250 East Castilla, down in Greenwood Village.
Bob Fleming, 2090 East 104th Avenue. Can I make one comment before we get too far? This is a good drawing. Because of this interchange right here, the on-off ramps, you won't ever see one here, because even though you say it's whatever the spacing is, the state highway wouldn't allow it. And the other general comment is, I don't think you'll see many more, if any, billboards, whether electronic or non-electronic, because of between the county's regulation, the existing signs that are there, and the state's regulations, there's almost no places you could put them. Plus, you got to be industrial, I think by the state law.
Commercial or industrial?
Commercial or industrial back to the 60s?
60s.
60s. And the new areas up north along I-76 or US 85 or whatever, it was zoned agriculture in the 60s, so even if somebody gets it rezoned, they're not going to put a billboard on it. You're only, from the billboard standpoint, I think you're going to see some conversions maybe of existing signs, but not new signs. And the other general comment is, I think what you have, the sign companies, they keep them dimmed, for a lot of reasons, but you got one person to deal with. You call Steve or call the other companies. Most of the ones I think you get complaints about, I know the Transwest one they've complained about, and I happen to have some involvement with that. That's a private property owner, and I think that's where most of your issues will be. Besides that, we'll answer any questions you have.
Commissioner
Have a-
Tedesco?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a clarification question. You said you'd never see the signs there on I-25 and 58th? Are you talking about the billboard signs?
I'm
Or are you
talking about there
talking
will be
about the
no more
illuminated signs that are
No,
already existing?
Maybe I wasn't clear. There'll be no more billboards
No more
Right.
new ones.
along this whole I-25 corridor because of, between the state law
Right.
and the county's regulations, you can't put any more up. Yes, there is the one at the Mart, which I know that you had some trouble with because they were starting to do off-premise advertising,
Well.
and both the
and
county
let's-
and the state got
yeah.
on them to quit doing that.
And let's be fair, it's not just individual ones. It's a kind of a broad,
I'm not arguing that at all.
yeah. Because,
Yeah.
and that's what I was trying to say is that if we're going to enforce, right, let's hold private owners and sign companies to the same accountability so that you're not paying for an individual's action when you come before this board, right?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to put blame on one or the other. I'm just saying that if we're going to do these electronic signs, whether they're private or they're through a sign company, let's hold that accountability equal to everybody. And that's, and you bring up a good point, you say, well, they can just call the sign company. Well, a lot of people, see it on a property and they say, I got to call that property.
Yeah.
And they don't know, even like we didn't know, the difference, between a private sign and a billboard sign and who's accountable for that. So,
The only other comment I have is that on this specific one is the one person who came to the hearing was on the other side, on the other side, is it Lincoln Street? And they came to, well, they're an industrial use, I think they rent a yard or something. They came to the conclusion they couldn't even see the sign, they really didn't care. But they didn't know enough about it before they showed up, so that's why they came.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to just make one statement. Addressing the brightness issue with the digital signs, whether it's on an off-premise billboard or on an on-premise private sign, and I'm not sure if the regulations currently do this, but I know that there are other municipalities that have this language in there where they'll require the applicant to show the design of the sign and that it has automatic dimming capability. So a lot of the signs that are out there that you see that are private signs that are on-premise are purchased, they're cheaper models, and they're either on or they're off. And when they're on during the day, you won't notice it as much, but at night, they're like a beacon, and you've probably seen some of the ones that are the culprits. For what it's worth, our billboards have auto-dimming technology. So whether it's the middle of the day or it's at night, as the ambient light changes, so does the intensity of the sign. So we run our signs at about 8 to 10% capacity at night. So that may be a requirement that you can put in your code if you make changes moving forward, where you can control that, whether it's on the on-premise sign or the off-premise side.
Appreciate that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions, commissioners? Just a side note, it's a political season, we're a little sensitive to signs, just saying.
Totally get it. I'm used to it all
There's
the time.
something going on called the sign wars, who can have bigger, better ones.
I get it.
All right, do I have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, I need the public. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak? I see no one. Okay, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Tedesco.
I would move that 16-734 RCU 2016-00021 Mile High Outdoor Advertising be approved with, based on 8 findings of facts, 3 conditions, and 1 note.
I'd second that.
Commissioner Tedesco?
Yes.
Commissioner Pulaski?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson? Commissioner Henry?
Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Sorry you guys had to wait.
No worries.
All right, what do we have next?
So this is the Alta Rose subdivision. Trying to go over here. There we go. So the applicant is requesting to rezone from R1C to R2 and then do a major subdivision or preliminary plat to subdivide 2.9 acres into 13 lots. So the subject site is located just south of West 64th Avenue with Tennyson Street to the west and Lowell Boulevard to the east. Then you can see there's Tennyson Knoll Elementary there just to the west. The current zoning is residential 1C, as are most of the surrounding properties. Directly north is R1A, which is also single-family residential. And then there are some R2 just northwest and then also east. And then the planned unit development directly south and east of the subject sites are also allow single-family residential. The future land use is urban residential, so this allows for single and multifamily at densities of 1 unit per acre or greater. Just to give you an idea of the site plan before we get into things, and also note that north is to the right of the screen. So the applicant's proposing 13 lots, 1 single family, and then 12 duplex, and then this tract A is for a detention pond. So to go over the rezoning criteria, it needs to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, the standards and regulations, and the surrounding area. So this would be the zoning map if the rezoning were to be approved. So the 2 parcels highlighted in blue would be rezoned to R2. So there are some other R2 in the area. And as I stated earlier, the comprehensive plan land use designation is urban residential, which does allow for single and multifamily. So to go over the surrounding density, directly north, the average lot size is 0.21 acres. Just to the northeast or northwest, it's 0.15 acres. And then that planned unit development directly south, the average lot size is 0.11 acres. And the applicant is proposing about 0.1 acre lots. So it is very compatible with the planned unit development directly south, even though those are single family homes. What the applicant is proposing are duplexes. So to go over the major subdivision or preliminary plat criteria, again, it needs to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, the development standards and regulations surrounding area, as well as have adequate public facilities. So those that are highlighted in yellow are also criteria for the rezoning. So once again, this is the preliminary plat. So the applicant's proposing 13 lots, 1 single family is lot 1, tract A is the detention pond, and then Quitman Street would be dedicated to the county as a public road. So our subdivision requirements require the subdivision to meet the minimum standards of the zone district. So for the R2 zone district, the minimum lot size is 4,500 square feet per unit. The applicant is proposing 4,570 square feet to 8,630, and that's that single family lot is the large one. And the minimum lot width is 45 feet or 50 feet if it's a corner. So the applicant's proposing 35 to 60. So that 35 also meets our subdivision regulations, state that wedge-shaped lots are permitted and they should have a minimum width of 30. So those are around that cul-de-sac. The minimum lot is 35. As well as our subdivision standards, all lots need to have access from a public road. So they will be dedicating Quitman Street to the county, and all public improvements will need to be done by the applicant, and they are proposing to do curb, gutter, and sidewalk along Quitman. So here's just a representation of what the duplexes could look like. So during the referral period, staff received no major concerns. Our engineering development services did note that a final traffic study and drainage report along with an SIA and collateral will be required with the application for a final plat. Additionally, staff sent the public notification to 389 property owners. We received 3 comments. 2 were concerned with traffic and the density that this could bring, as well as drainage on the site, and then 1 called in support of the project. So this case was heard in front of the Planning Commission on September 22nd, and they recommended unanimous approval. They did have a question for the applicant regarding Ms. Fitzpatrick's comment about drainage, and I believe the applicant spoke with her yesterday, met with her and her husband about this. And then 1 neighboring property owner did come. He mostly wanted to learn more about the proposed development. So here's the view looking south from West 64th Avenue. So that, the home on the left is a single-family home that will remain and be rehabbed, and then the one on the right will be demolished. So this is looking further into the site. You can see back there, those are the units in the planned unit development, just south. This is looking east along West 64th, so there is already curb, gutter, and walk on West 64th Avenue. Here's looking north from West 64th Avenue. Here's west along West 64th. And then this is just to get an idea of the density. So this is that planned unit development, just east and south. And so that have very comparable lot sizes, with the exception of these are detached single-family homes. And so what the applicant's proposing would mostly be attached. So staff has found that the proposed or the request is consistent with the development standards and regulations, the surrounding area, the comprehensive plan. Therefore, we are recommending approval based on 13 findings of fact and 5 conditions. And that concludes staff presentation.
Okay, commissioners, do we have questions? Commissioner Pulaski.
Because we've had concerns recently regarding parking, how do you address parking with the duplexes?
So they are required to do 2 off-site parking spaces, and I believe there will be attached garage and then driveways that can fit 2 parking spaces. That's what our code requires currently.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Tedesco.
I just want to follow up, and it's probably more a question for the applicant, but is there going to be on-street parking allowed in these and along that Quitman?
Yeah, we'll have to ask the applicant, I think. Yes.
Any further questions for the staff? I see none. Thank you. Can the applicant come forward? If you could state your name and address, please.
My name Bob Fleming, 2090 East 104th Avenue. I'll let Lonnie answer your questions.
Lon P. Gates, 3900 West 64th Avenue, Arvada.
Okay. Do you have anything to state, or is that everything fine, or?
I'm very good with everything.
Okay.
I did speak to Ms. Fitzpatrick last night, and there's just some things we need to work out on the fencing for the retainage area, and that's it.
If you want to put the one map up that's the aerial, I can show you where our house is if you'd like. Well, either one, yeah, well, that's, yeah, well, that's fine too. It's right down here. This corner.
Right there in that corner, yes.
She had to deal with this property owner, his house is right here. I mean, it's close. So that's why the detention got moved to the middle, so we wouldn't have a house right behind it. And that forced the drainage to have to come down that property owner's property line. And then then come over, and then it'll go down an existing easement that exists in that subdivision. And he's talked with her about, temporary construction. There's a fence there that he'll have to remove and, and put back in and stuff like that. But he'll work that out with her.
Okay, great.
And the house prices, and somebody's, what is it, 400,000?
Yeah, 4 to 450.
It's crazy,
Somebody always
isn't it?
asks that kind of thing.
It
so-
is just crazy, but, it is what it is. Yeah. Commissioner Tedesco.
So two-part question for duplex? Because that was a question that we asked twice up here. 400,000 for a duplex.
For one half of it, yes, sir.
For half of it, wow.
And they're paired homes now.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're called paired
or-
homes, yeah,
Or
paired
attached
homes.
single-family homes. They're not duplexes anymore.
Yes, yes.
I guess a follow-up question would be, how does that fit compared to the median house prices in that area?
It fits, some of the houses are a little bit lower. Up the side of Lowell, there are some pretty good-sized homes up there that are in the 500,000 to 600,000, just 3 blocks.
It's comparable or a little higher than most of them in the area.
Okay, my original question I wanted to ask is any of this HOA covenants or dues maintained community, any of it?
Minor amount, the detention pond, if you'll go back to the slide that shows the subdivision,
The easement.
this is maintained by the HOA. The street is a public street. And then there'll be a sign up, is it this corner or that corner?
Yeah, one of
They'll
the,
have one of those little signs. And then he'll be responsible for maintaining the drainage way comes down here. So it goes, the drainage goes here, and then down here, and then to that existing easement on that lady's lot. So, yeah, but it's not a huge amount, because there's no road, you know.
But I guess my question is, you just said that it will be part of an HOA. Is that an existing HOA in the area?
No. I will form that HOA as part of this process.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, great, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to come forward and make comments? I see none. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd move for approval of 16-755, PRC 2016, 4 zeros and a 3, Gates Development and Alta Rose subdivision, based on 13 findings of fact and 5 conditions.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner Pulaski,
Yes.
Commissioner Tedesco,
Yes?
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Yes,
Thank you for your time.
thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Sorry you had to wait. All right, and we'll go ahead and adjourn. It is now 10:35.